for whatever reason, that thing that caused you your downfall perhaps in your earlier life is probably the thing that's given you the most drive and ambition and success,
100%,
relatively
mate.
speaking, in your current role.
That's what they say, don't they? It's what's the definition of being dumb is doing the same thing twice and expecting a different outcome. So when that experience happened in America, honestly, lads, I used to like envision myself playing like for a certain team and wearing the kit. I don't care if that sounds like over the top, but it's what worked for me. I used to envision everything, and I used to focus so much on that I would forget about like what I was doing on that day. And that sort of process, it didn't work for me the first time, so I really tried to change that.
Welcome to Across the Line on this Football Friday. We've got a treat, especially for all the Kaya fans out there who experienced one Louis Clark, a 3-year period that is extremely memorable for all those that follow the journey of Kaya throughout the years. Chris, we finally got him on.
Finally got him on the show. Obviously, he was featured in last week's episode for our all-time Foreigner 11, which prompted us to get him on the show. Long-time listener, viewer, loves the podcast, so really good to get him on the show. As explosive as he was on the pitch is as explosive he was on the podcast. So yeah, really good to have him on the show. Speaks a lot about not just his footballing experiences, but a lot of his experiences off the field, some of his woes with injuries, with indulging too much with the nightlife, gambling. He talks about his time in America. Pretty all-encompassing. So a real treat just to get a more of a glimpse into what it was like for him during his spell, not just in the Philippines, but over the course of his whole career.
And extremely transparent, wasn't he? Like about the good things that he'd done, about the bad things, the things he would have changed, all of it. I mean, he's really come out and talked about even, the fears that he had as a footballer and not being able to apply himself when the career was finished. All of that was discussed on this episode, the whole journey, the lessons in between, and putting certain individuals in the community on blast as well. It's not lacking of entertainment value, that is for sure. And we hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed having this conversation with Louis. So if you enjoy it, as we did, please do subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and find us on social media on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And without further ado, the great Louis Clark is on the show. Today, we've got joining us all the way from England, Mr. Louis Clark is on the show. How's it going, Louis?
I'm good, Jing. Yourself?
Doing all right, man. I'm going to build you up as this episode goes on. I don't want to throw too much weight on you right off the bat, you know what I mean? But maybe Christopher can help us out with a few tidbits about you. Chris, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to give him any kind of build-up, though. We can just go straight into it.
Why have we got to go down this route already? Do you know what I mean?
We started really early, to be honest, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's 8 o'clock here. I appreciate being invited on. I was just saying to Chris, he must be struggling with his guest lineup, because to get me on the show, I don't know. I think there's some much bigger names, but it's I'm honoured to be on. I watch the show all the time for when you're interviewing guests that I know. I watched the McMenemy one about 15 times just to see how awkward it was and to just to see that rivalry between Chris and him. But yeah, love it. Love what you're doing, guys.
Actually, Jing, the reason why we got him on was he listened to the all-time 11 episode, which we did last week, and it kind of prompted him to send me a message and say how much he enjoyed it. He was pleasantly surprised that he managed to sneak into the starting 11.
Well, I was trying to get your PayPal details, weren't I, to chuck you over that little bit of bit of money to squeeze me in.
That's it.
Yeah, that was a great episode. That brought back so many memories. Do you know what I mean? Some of the names that you brought up, I completely forgot about. But yeah, that was a really good listen.
Did you agree with it? Did you agree with the lineup?
I did actually. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I think it was a really strong team. You got all of the people. You managed to work all of the people in there. The only one that I did, Jordan Mitter. I was thinking about chucking myself out and putting him in the front three. But other than that, I think you got it pretty much right. Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan was a handful to coach. I think I alluded to it on the podcast. He was a bit of a
I
loose
agree.
cannon.
Yeah, he did his own thing, didn't he? He really did
Yeah,
his own thing, and he didn't really care too much. And I think that's what gave him that edge. Ultimately,
yeah.
he was one of the rawest players I've ever come across by a long stretch.
So yeah, no, I think he was maybe a bit unfortunate, but we've only got 11 spots. Can't fit everyone in. So
No.
speaking of Mitter, I think Adam Mitter was a bit upset, and maybe we have to get him on because he was
Yeah,
a bit upset he weren't in the lineup as well. We actually upset quite a few people.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you're gonna, aren't you, when you do that sort of thing? But you have to make them decisions. But I saw you. Mitter's obviously gone on. And he's doing well now, isn't he? Is he the king of Malaysia? Is he or something?
Indonesia.
Indonesia. I used to love playing against Mitter. I used to absolutely love it. But it seems like he's kicking on with his career. So all the best to him. Good luck to him.
For those unfamiliar with Louis, actually, we play it down a little bit. But when you arrived in the Philippines, there was a huge uproar that transpired. Initially it was like, who is Louis Clark? And then it's like, damn, nobody can stop talking about Louis Clark for a little while. And then it was just goals, 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 and running up and down the flank super fast. And everybody was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy, Louis Clark? And that was quite an introduction into the world of Philippine football for you.
I think you're right. It was a quick start. I remember flying over and we had a few friendlies and stuff at the blue pitch in Makati, and I remember being really rusty and thinking, I don't even know if I want to get in the team here. Like I'm on the other side of the world, and I don't think there was a lot of rust. I wasn't playing at a high level before I came in, and then the cup game started. I think, didn't they, Chris? And I had no idea who we were playing against, but we were playing against a team called Dolphins, and who were the other ones, Chris?
They were terrible teams. That's how comes you got off to that flying start.
Some terrible teams, Jing, where no, not trying to offend anyone, but yeah, it wasn't the greatest level, and scored a few goals and stuff, and I come away thinking I was Phil Younghusband. I thought I was going to crack the Philippines. And it just didn't turn out that way, And then I remember Chris saying to me, like, we beat these teams, and then we had a real tough test, I think, against like Loyola or Global, and I couldn't get a kick. I couldn't get on the ball, didn't have a shot on target. So I think that pretty much sums up the Philippines, really, and the level that you have these teams that are not so good, and then you have teams that are, at a decent level, a real decent level, and that's shown.
You guys have a bit of a history, you and Chris, right? How did you find your way into the Philippines anyway?
Yeah, so I've known Chris. I remember the first time I come across Chris I must have been about 10 or 11, 12 years old. Can't remember exactly. And we were at a club called Brighton Hove Albion, who are a much bigger team now than what they were when we were there, the Centre of Excellence. And Chris was sort of, without trying to make his ego blow up, the poster boy of the Centre of Excellence at that time. And I was just like a young kid with my parents at the like coach parent night, where they would give you feedback on how you did for the year. And I remember the academy director coming up to me and going, "Oh, that's who you want to, this is who we want you to be like one day." And it was Chris, and I had no idea who he was, sort of thing. But from that moment, I don't know why I remember it so much. I sort of always had him in my mind, sort of thing. And I got to know his brother. Me and his brother played in the same youth team. And from there, Chris and me started chatting, and he went out of his way to help us. I was in an under 18s team at Lewis, with not many options, to be honest, Jing. Not many options at all. No real good grades. No clear football pathway to go down after school. And Chris sort of just put his arm out and said, "What about America?" And at that time, I remember telling my parents about it, and they were sort of like, "What you want about? You're not going to America." Quite that sort of situation. It was unheard of. And after talking with him and bugging him and driving him mad to try and find out more, he sort of said to me, "Get some footage, and I'll send it out to my connections out in the States." And one thing led to another. I was offered a scholarship at a school in Ohio, So our relationship sort of, I wouldn't say blossomed, but sort of went from there, didn't it, Chris? Where he helped me for no reason at all. You know, no money, didn't want anything for it, and essentially changed my life. Where I would have, at the time, I was working on a building site with my dad, and then a couple of months later, we got to August, I was flying out to Ohio on a lumpy football scholarship. I couldn't believe my luck. So it sort of went from there, Chris, didn't it? And then we always stayed in touch. After graduating from school, I went to Australia, which is obviously over that way of the world in Asia. And Chris I remember doing 2 years in Australia playing, and Chris said, do you fancy jumping on a flight and coming up to Manila? And then that's where it all started.
Wow, unbelievable. How do you remember this story, poster boy Chris?
I don't remember being a poster boy. Don't think that was ever the case. But maybe the youth. Maybe was it the youth development officer, or was it my dad?
It was Hinch. It was Hinch.
Oh, was it? Oh, wow. Okay.
I have told you about this, and you didn't. I remember you saying you don't remember it, and you wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
I don't think. But it was sort of like one of Hinch's off comments, where it was sort of like, by the way, everyone was shit scared of this bloke, and he was like, "That's who you want to be like." It was just like a quick comment, but it stuck with me.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And then I sort of learned more. I did my research on Chris and found out they had other clubs looking at him, and he was very highly respected within the centre of excellence back then in Brighton, and they had, there were some good players there. And
yeah, so I don't remember that bit. I don't remember that bit, but
no, I bet you don't.
Yeah. I was probably, yeah. I mean, that's nice to hear, but kind of going more on the helping Louis out. Like, I always remember what it was like when I got released from my club, or released by Brighton at 19. There was very few people who were willing to help you out. Football's a very cutthroat business, and 1 minute, as you said, you're flavour of the month, and people are expecting you to go and kick on and be the next big thing. And that's the same with every age group. There's always someone who's going to be the next big thing, and invariably those players never seem to transpire. It's always, I always think it's the players who kind of sort of bubble under the surface and come good at the right times, and just kind of over a period of time just keep ebbing away, keep working at their game, who invariably ultimately end up making the grade. So, when I found myself with limited options, it's not a nice feeling to have, and I would like to have had someone to help me and guide me along that pathway, to let them know, look, there are other options that are out there, because I didn't really have that when it happened to me. So I was quite familiar with sort of people in and around Louis' age group, really, because I've got 2 younger brothers, as you know, and a lot of them, were released or didn't quite make the cut. And probably I would say Louis was one of a bunch of players who I ended up helping go into America. I mean, you look at people a couple of years older than you, like Jack Stern, you probably would have been with at the time. Jack's now the goalkeeper coach at FC Cincinnati under Jaap Stam, for example. So I helped him get out to America. And a bunch of other people. Yeah, Will Broomfield went out and played with my brother. Obviously, my brother went out. Both my brothers went out there. So there was a bunch of people who just wanted to help out. And I think for me, going to America provided a great pathway for people who weren't able to quite cut the grade in the UK. Because I saw what it did to a lot of people who went down the non-league route. So you go down that sort of semi-professional route. And while you can carve out a good career for yourself, while you can bounce back into pro football, it is quite difficult, Jing, once you make that step down. Opportunities weren't what it is now, where I think kids coming down the system can sort of have a safety net of if you get released from Brighton now, the likelihood is, coming from a Premier League club, you might find another club, a tier or 2 down. So you can kind of keep yourself in and around the pro game for longer. Clubs are willing to retain players for a longer period of time also. So yeah, just at that time, I just wanted to help people out. Louis was one of those. And how Louis ended up in Ashland was, I don't know if you remember Kenny, but Kenny Hewitt was a kid who, similar, I helped bring out to America, I think the year before you, from the same area, and he did incredibly well. So it kind of gave me a little bit of credibility, I guess, when it was sort of recommending players. And I actually didn't have to have that much of a hard sell. I got the footage, I sent it to the coach. The coach said he liked what he saw. and then invited him over. He subsequently got a move out to Syracuse. Similar conversation. So my coach then went to Syracuse, which is a really big university in New York. Trained for basketball. Has an unbelievable basketball program. But Louis was part of a rejuvenation of that program. I know the coach who was there speaks very highly of Louis. So no, for me, like it was always a case of I knew what it was like to be in that predicament, and just wanted to make sure that people knew that they're, when they got released from their clubs or when they didn't have, a viable option for them on the table, that it's nice to have someone who can sort of help you out or perhaps guide you on the way, because they've been through a similar trajectory, I guess.
Jim, just to give you some context there, like companies, and there's a million and one companies and agencies that do that job now. What Chris did essentially for me, from taking me from a situation which wasn't great and giving me an opportunity to get an education and continue with full-time football. But they're charging $3.5 grand a client now. Now, this is something that Chris, I remember it so clearly. We played a game at Lewis. It was for the under-18s, and we got smacked, and we were awful. And I remember him sitting us down and going, if you play like that, you're never going to, I don't want to help. I can't help you. But he completely went out of his way, didn't have to do it, spent time, effort, using his connections to help us out. And I think that's, it really does show testament to the sort of bloke he is, do you know what I mean? And I'll always be thankful for that, where he had no business helping us. Really, Chris, did you? I don't know if there was an agenda behind it or not, but it seemed like the purest gesture ever, and he came through, do you know what I mean? But people are charging a fortune now for that same service, Chris. So it was unbelievable, really. My luck was definitely in.
And what was that experience like? Go ahead, Chris.
Maybe I should have charged some money, Jing. I'm not flush with cash at the moment. There's a global pandemic on, so maybe I should have put that money away for a rainy day. You know what? Mate, I think that stuff gets paid forward, though, Louis. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I look at it. You know what I mean? Like I never did it with any agenda. I never did it with one eye on. I'll bring you to the Philippines in 5 years' time, and then you can come and play for me. It was never like that. It was just a case of, I just thought it was a nice thing to do. You're in a privileged position of knowing people. Do you know what I mean? I was that was just the scenario that I found myself in, was that I knew a lot of coaches. I knew there were good players that I could potentially help out. And if it just means, the only thing that really I stood to lose was my reputation. So I wasn't one to recommend. I don't recommend a lot of people, Gene. That was one thing that I was really clear about. And of the kids that I recommended, all of them went over and absolutely smashed it. There was not many people who went over and he was all right for me. All of them have gone on to do really good things. Like a lot of them are still coaching, a lot of them still involved in the game. Some are still playing professionally, but I know all of them went over, did their 4 years, and did a really good job.
Yeah, I remember you actually saying, Chris. I remember trying to repay you when I didn't have a pot to whatever in, and I remember you saying just send someone out there that you do the same as what I did, sort of thing. And over the years I've tried to send boys over there to the schools that we went to, using the connections that we had. I'm sure Chris will agree that if you the relationship you have with these coaches out there, if you say a player's good enough and they trust your opinion, they're going to give that player an opportunity. And I think that's what I've tried doing as well over the last few years, is just sending the right kids to my mates over in America, and hopefully they can continue to do the same.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
It's quite an organic sort of setup, isn't it, Chris? Really, to be honest, just helping each other out. It really isn't a lot of work, and it's life changing. Like you say, there's loads of people out there. They may not be playing football anymore, but they may be married over there, working a job, whatever it may be. But taking them from one situation and putting them into another, it can't be a bad thing, I don't think.
I don't know much about the Syracuse program and the environment with the football, but I've seen some NCAA games of basketball where the Syracuse crowd is quite raucous. Like it's a fantastic atmosphere. What was it like for football?
Jing, my senior year, it was ranked the number one party school in the US. And I would love to say I had a big part to play in that. It was out of this world, and I miss it every single day. It was crazy. Like school, I wasn't there for school. I'm not academic at all. I didn't do well in school in England. I tried. I tried. I wasn't like the sort of kid in school that would just toss it off, not listen to the teacher. I would always listen and try. I just wasn't able to do it very well. And I remember having a really bad GPA. I got like a 2 point. I think I graduated with a 2.2 or a 2.4 GPA. I wasn't there for the school. I was there for not for the football. I was there for like the lifestyle and the experience. That's what really grabbed me. I remember paying off my tutors. I remember doing anything to get the grades, because in America you have to have a certain grade to then be able to play. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
And they were almost locking me in a room, making me do my work to make sure that I was eligible to play. Just for an example, all the other players would be given 2 hours study hall a week where they would have to sign into a room with a card, so they know they're there, with computers and tutors and stuff, and do their work. Well, I had to do 8 hours a week just because my work was so bad. And Mac, the head coach, who that's Chris's connection, who I have a good relationship with now, I would drive him mad. Like I know I caused him some real stress. But yeah, Syracuse in terms of a place, I would say it was probably the best time of my life. 30,000 kids, all with not much to do, playing football every other day. It was brilliant, Jing. Yeah, it was fantastic.
That sounds like an amazing time, actually.
Yeah, I miss it every day. I'm back to reality now. Look out the window now. It's hammering down with rain. I've got a load of work to do. People driving me mad. But yeah, I wish I could go back and be a sophomore in Syracuse again, definitely.
Jing,
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
We have a lot of kids that listen to the show, watch the show, kids who you would have coached as well, Louis. So they're at the age now where they're talking about going to universities. Some of them are looking at going to America. Like, what are some of the things that you think these kids need to be aware of, both good and bad, about going over and playing at that sort of level?
I joke about my grades and stuff, but the education part of it is really serious. You know, I wish I did take it more serious, but ultimately I just wasn't very good at my academics. But it is so important to get that education. A lot of my friends that took school serious have really good jobs now, and they're almost, you know, they're I wouldn't say they're financially secure, but they've got a good job with a decent pathway where they have a career. Do you know what I mean? It's something that I think if you're looking to further your education, it's definitely a good option to get your school paid for and try and go down that scholarship route. Chris, I remember some of the boys, obviously Mick, Teo, that whole age group. How old are they now? Are they
they're all looking at it?
16?
Yeah, they're all looking at it. Yeah.
So yeah, if they are listening, I would really recommend it. Get in touch with I don't know how busy Chris is at the moment, myself or Chris, and I would love to help some of them guys, you know. I'm not sure what the situation is if they're listening at the moment with COVID. I actually saw that aren't full sports cancelled in the States at the moment, or I don't know how that's going to affect everything. But if it's something that you're looking to do, you know, get in touch with the people that have been out there before. Try and stay away from these big agencies. I believe, this is my opinion, that are going to charge you a fortune, because at the end of the day, if the kid's right, it's a phone call. And like I say, if coaches, I believe coaches will trust our opinions, and if a player's good enough and we want to put our name to them, it isn't a lot of work to try and get that over the line. Do you like that? Across the line.
Across the line. I saw what you did there. Very clever. Right, very good.
No, but yeah, like it was a great option. You get to continue your full-time football. You get treated. The facilities at Syracuse, especially, were on another level. So, unlimited trainers and physios around you. If you get sick, you see the doctor straight away. If you need an X-ray, you go to the hospital. Your food's all done, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The facilities are there 24/7 for you to go and use. The gym, the indoor pitch, the outdoor pitch, hot tubs, cold pools, whatever you want. We were completely spoiled, and it essentially gives you every opportunity, I think, to be the best player you can. You know, it definitely put me in good stead. Like with the America thing, not to go on about it too much, but I think you'd agree, Chris. Like everyone sort of, the MLS is the end goal. That's what it was for me. after school, I wasn't going to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever with my degree. I always wanted to go to the MLS, and it's actually quite a funny story where I was told to leave school early as I was going to be drafted. And with the MLS, they put out these sort of like mock drafts, top 10 lists, and I was involved in pretty much all of them. So I remember coming home for the draft, and it was on ESPN Plus or something, and got the whole family round. We're watching it and expecting to be picked. And then I remember on the first day, it was like round 1 and 2, where like I think the top 60 players or 50 players get picked. And I wasn't predicted to go in them rounds. I was meant to go later. And when you go later, you sometimes don't get signed. You just get invited into a training camp or something. So then first 2 rounds went past. And the next day, the 3rd, 4th and 5th round. And this is when I was like, look, this is when it's happening. And we were all there watching it. And it just never happened. My name never got called. And honestly, I just wanted to sack football off at that point. Like, you put so much into for me, it was a big problem. Like, and it's something I try and live by today, is where I had this end goal of being in the MLS. It's all I wanted to do. But I wasn't really focusing on what I was doing the next day or that day. It was all long-term goal sort of stuff. And I think that was ultimately my downfall, where if I sort of focused on what I was doing that day and the next day rather than what's going on in 5 months' time, I think I would have had a better chance of getting there. But the college setup now, I do think it's a little bit different, to be honest. I think the levels got better. I think more like pro, like Cat 1, players are going out there to play. But it was incredible experience that set me up to then, go to Australia. Australia was
sorry, Lou, before we go
yes.
to there, did you do the combine? Did you go to the combine or not?
No, it was quite.
So what happened there?
Yeah.
Why did you not go to the combine?
Didn't get invited. It was.
Did you not think that was a bit of an alarm bell then?
But like, I think 50 people got invited to the combine, but there was like 150 that get picked or something. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
And the combine was, I remember it being in Florida, and honestly, I was told I was going. Like, it was going to happen. And then I remember being in a car and the list came out and I weren't on the list, and I was fuming. I was raging. But the reason I thought I was going was because what I was seeing online and what I was hearing from people that I trusted. And I do trust, they were obviously getting told stuff, but I was very much in the loop with the conversations between clubs and the school, which then made the school turn around. Like, obviously clubs were saying to the school, look, we're going to take him, and the school told me to drop out of school, to not sign up for classes next semester. So when you get told that sort of thing, I thought it was a done deal. But like anything in life, it's not done until it was far from done.
Did you end up doing that spring semester then to finish off school?
No, so yeah, it was funny. So I obviously didn't register for classes, and then the draft was in January, early January, and classes you had to be back like middle of January, I think it was. So I wasn't enrolled. So I went to Australia for that semester, and then came back to school to finish up. If that makes sense. So I missed the spring, went to Australia, and then came back for the fall to finish my grades. But I ended up failing and then having to stay for another semester to finish up. So yeah, I dragged the whole process.
Was that by design?
For 5 years.
Was that by design?
It got to halfway through the semester where it was sort of possible for me to stay for another semester if I didn't do so well. So yeah, pretty much, Chris. Without trying to get anyone in trouble, yeah, I ended up getting another semester out of it where I was dressed up as an undergraduate assistant, which was another experience in itself. Yeah, trying to juggle the number one party school in America with being an assistant grad coach was quite tricky, to be honest. I don't think I turned up too much. But yeah, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant, and that obviously led to Australia, which was complete park football. It was recreational, paid football. You know, we were getting paid. It wasn't a lot of money at all. But again, it was with a couple of my mates, Dan Summers and my mate Charlie Romain, who I played with previously. Dan at Syracuse, Charlie back here in England, and yeah, we just played out there. And Australia was a bit of a jolly up, to be honest. It wasn't too professional. We would train once a week if we were lucky, and did that for 2 years. And then that's when Chris gave me the call to come to Manila.
2 years. Where in Australia were you?
We're out in the sticks, so we're in a town called Myrtleford, 2 hours outside of Melbourne. The football wasn't great, to be honest. It was nothing like Syracuse, and it was nothing like Manila. It was essentially, I wouldn't say pub football, but it was park football. Do you know what I mean? But in Australia, like everywhere else in the world, they have a different setup where the bragging rights in this park football are high. You know, there's people putting money into it, funding teams. Everyone was getting paid. Yeah, it was a different experience. I would say it was probably a step backwards, but a step backwards to then move forwards. That's the way I looked at it.
What did you know about Manila prior to coming?
Nothing. I knew that Chris and Simon were famous out there. That's what it seemed like to me. And I think at that time it was when you guys were having the real boom within Philippine football. You know, the Azkals doing really well, and football sort of was it on par with basketball? You know, it was definitely growing in popularity at that time. So yeah, I knew that them two were doing really well out there, and I think I was always me and Chris would talk about it, wouldn't we, Chris? So he would drop the feelers out there and say, would this be something you're interested in? But yeah, I don't think the timing was right. But there was a time when I think he messaged me or Facebook me and said, look, you ready to come out? And at that time, I dropped everything and said, yeah, let's give this a go. But yeah, in terms of the football scene, Jing, I didn't know nothing. I don't think the coverage was that good then. I don't think the UFL or I remember you boys were playing at Emperador, weren't you? And I didn't see any of that footage until I got over there.
Yeah. When you arrived, you played at Rizal mostly, right?
Yeah, so we played. Emperador was the season before, and then we played at Rizal. My first game was at the blue pitch in Makati. I can't remember who we played, Chris. It was a friendly. I don't expect you to remember. But yeah, we played at Rizal. We played at the pitch in BGC. You know, the turf in BGC. We trained there. And Emperador. I used to love Emperador. I think it's still a fantastic setup. I think it's brilliant. I would have actually liked to have played there as well. I don't think it would have suited me too much, but yeah, Rizal was a funny one as well. I didn't really get along with Rizal. I think the turf, it was like, at Rizal, it was like real high grade turf, isn't it? It's quite long and thick, and I didn't really like the roll of the ball on it. I much preferred the surface at Emperador. But yeah, fond memories of Rizal. I remember the cockroaches in the showers and it's not what people, I try and explain it to people, but they can't grasp it.
One thing that was a bit unique with you was how quickly the fans felt connected to you, right? The reason that I knew that was when I saw a friend of mine that I went to high school with. Her name's Chriselle. We went to high school together in CSA, and she turned it up at Rizal one time. I was like, you'd never watched a football game in your life. And on top of that, she had like a stick with your head on it. Louis Clark head, right? And I was like, what's going on here? Like, how is she watching a game, and why is she fangirling over some guy that just arrived, right? Louis Clark. And that's when I sort of saw that you know, there's something special here, right? People are being turned on to see you play something exciting.
I loved it. I'm not going to lie about it. It's something that I never experienced before. You know, I had this idea of being a pro footballer all my life and everything that comes with it, and not being famous. I never wanted to be famous at all, and I wasn't famous. But having people interested and excited to watch you play is definitely something that I think most players aspire to. You know, having that, walking out of Rizal and having people waiting there to say hello and things like that is something that was new and I never had before. So I embraced it. Do you know what I mean? I enjoyed it. I don't think it was, I ended up not liking it, to be honest. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that I was bombarded like the Azkals or Phil or James and that. It was totally different. They were on a complete another level. But I think within the football community, you know, there was a little bit of, I wouldn't say hype, like I guess there was a bit of exposure there. And I liked it at the start because it was new. But I ended up realising that it wasn't for me. It wasn't the sort of person I was. I didn't really like everyone looking at me and things like that. You might find that hard to believe. But yeah, I learned quite quickly that it wasn't that important to me, and I didn't enjoy it that much, although I might have showed it at the time.
That's quite interesting because, Chris, I remember you and I having this conversation about Louis and thinking like, you know, somebody who embraced that side of the game so quickly and was so good at it as well. You know, like it felt as if you were very, very personable with everybody that came across you, and you really gave everybody the time of day.
No, definitely. Yeah. Definitely, mate. Always, 100%. I wanted to make sure that I didn't. I think on the pitch, I upset a lot of people, and that's just the way I sort of played. That's how I tried to get the best out of myself. I would always try and pick personal battles with people. I always found I played better in games when I had like a little off the field or personal battle with a few of the players on the other team, and it would. I didn't realise it so much at the time, but looking back, it would drive me to really get up for the game and try and have a good game. When, for example, at Loyola, me and Chris's brother had a bit of history. Me and Adam Mitter had that English sort of battle. Me and Anton Del Rosario, we don't like each other. These little battles sort of that's what wound me up to try and have a good game. But then I knew that about myself. So when I came off the pitch, I always did try to be very friendly and come across the right way, you know, rather than trying to carry that persona that was on the pitch off the pitch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Chris, well, I remember us talking about this and you telling me that this wasn't a side of the game that you particularly enjoyed or excelled at, but Louis did.
Which part? The fame part?
Yeah.
The adulation part.
The giving the fans time and speaking with them and corresponding and all of that, you know.
I think you got to temper that with like the ultras Kaya people who were coming week in, week out. Like that's fine. I think you can give the time to those people because they're really invested in like coming out and watching us, and they did come out and support us week in, week out, you know, really vocal support, be very, you know, supportive online and that sort of thing. So that side of things wouldn't bother me one bit. It's when you get just people on the off chance popping up at Rizal, watching the odd game here and there, and then wanting to take pictures and asking you silly questions and that kind of stuff. Like when I don't feel it's genuine. I feel it's a bit gimmicky. Do you know what I mean? That's the sort of side, and I struggle with that. And then that's when I get a little bit rough. You know, I'm not too. I think that's a lot of that accumulated over time with me, and I think like that probably was exacerbated a little bit with Louis. Like you said, like when he came in, it's quite endearing at the beginning, but then after a while, it kind of wears thin. But then I think that's probably like with Louis. I probably imagine that's the case with a lot of different things that come with living with the Philippines. I mean, we had discussions about loads of different subjects about how certain things would wear thin on him, and you got to try and have this veil of just in front of you all the time. That's like there's certain things that you can't show. Do you know what I mean? You can't show your displeasure with certain things. And we used to laugh about having to get changed on the street. You know, like we would be like, you know,
I hated that, mate.
This is one of the things that really got. So actually, it kind of leads me on to the next question, really, because obviously there was a lot of great things about living here in Manila. But what were some of the things that you struggled with, apart from like you sort of said there about dealing with certain crowd elements and dealing with the opponents? What were some of the other more difficult elements that you had to adjust to coming out here?
Like you say, Chris, the Ultras Kaya, were unbelievable. That, like, I just want to say, like, I appreciate. I never really, the way I left the Philippines, I never really got the chance to say thank you to them. But it was like, I do want to say thank you to them, because they used to sing the whole game, whether we were playing no good or whether we were playing well. That support was always there, and that's something that I never experienced. So I did want to say thank you to them. But yeah, things that wow me up about the Philippines. Without trying to be rude, everything just takes a million years to get done. I always expect things to be, especially now, I want it to be done, or it needed to be done yesterday, and everything just took time. Do you know what I mean? I know that's quite a silly thing to sort of, but like you say, it grinds on you over time. There was just so much uncertainty. I remember being out there on the other side of the world for weeks and not playing games because this had happened or that had happened, and there was trouble with the PFF, or the Azkals are having issues, and I was out there to play football at the end of the day, and I remember being out there for a long time without playing any football. So that's something that wound me up. I know it's quite an easy one. Traffic. I'd rather walk than sit in that traffic ever again. It just used to kill me. Nothing really, Gene. I loved it. The heat, like, I don't know how we played in that heat. I don't care what anyone says. It's a different game. It's a completely different game in that heat. But other than that, I absolutely loved it. I found myself spending a lot of time on my own out there. Do you know what I mean? I was on my own a lot. I didn't have friends outside of football. I didn't have friends really on other teams. I just sort of stuck with the people at Kaya, who we were around with, who I was around every day. So I wouldn't say I was lonely, but because I had great people around me. My teammates, Paul Tolentino, Justin Tolentino, Chris. I had people that I could rely on, and if I needed them, or we needed, I was bored out of my head and needed to go for some food, there was a number of people I could have called on. But yeah, I think that was something that if I was to do it all again, I would have probably tried to have been a little bit more social during the days. In the night time, I think I was fairly social, but during the day, I wouldn't say I was lonely, but I didn't have too much to do. I think I struggled with that. If I was to tell you my day now, there ain't a minute that I've got free to do something that I want to do. And then I had all the time in the world, and then you start thinking, and I found myself just coming home from training and playing the PlayStation all day. Like there were days that were quite, I wouldn't say hard, but I struggled with that a little bit, not being able to fill my day. And I think that's the same for a lot of footballers, which is what it's actually quite an important topic, because you have all of this time whilst you're playing. No matter what anyone says, resting is resting. You can rest. You don't have to be laying in bed playing PlayStation to rest. There's other things that you could do. And I wish that I used that time a little bit more smarter or efficient, working on other things, to make more money or to further yourself as a person. You have all that time. So if there is any players out there listening that are in that sort of situation, get off the PlayStation and do something productive. I've come a little bit away from your question there, Chris, but yeah, like traffic, weather, getting things done, and filling my days are things that I found difficult.
Yeah. So what would you advise Louis Clark back in the day? Like what would you tell him specifically to do? Like you said, I mean, you did a little bit of work with the academy, which I'm sure we'll come on to later.
Yeah.
But what if you were to go and be specific about what you wish you'd have done? Because I guess that's probably quite relevant sort of information that most footballers can relate to, as you alluded to. So what would you specifically say you think you should have been doing if you could have that time back again?
It's quite a tricky one. So at the back end of my time in the Philippines, I quickly realised that I wasn't going to be playing football forever, for a number of reasons. I thought I didn't think I was good enough to earn the money that was required for not the lifestyle that I wanted to live at all, but to pay the bills. I think the money I was on, I appreciate completely, from Santi, LBC, Justin, Paul, Chris. It was great for that, but it wasn't the sort of money that would change my life or give me the life that I wanted. So I always knew that I wasn't going to be playing into my 30s, 31, 32, 33. There was options to go abroad, and I went the whole Singapore thing. But one thing that I noticed was that players were getting to that age, retiring, and then having to start back at square one with, whatever they were doing, going to a normal job. I'm not just talking about people in the Philippines, I'm talking about people back here as well, or going and working in an office at 31, 32 and kickstarting their professional careers again, where that just wasn't for me, Chris. Jing, I was never going to do that. That's why I stopped playing at such an early age, was because I wanted to start my professional career, my work career, sooner rather than later. And it was a real quick moment. Whereas if I could go backwards, I would have used that time to maybe, I had ideas of what I wanted to do, what I'm doing currently, working on that whilst I was resting in between training sessions and games. And I think that would have propelled me into my professional life, my working life, and put me in better stead, rather than quitting. What actually happened was stop playing football and then started from scratch with my working life. What would have been smarter was using that time whilst I was resting to work on these projects and these ideas that I wanted to do after football. So then once football is done, you're up and running. So that actually, Chris, that would be my advice, is to, set, I know it's quite an easy thing to say, but work on what you're going to be doing after football whilst you're playing. If you're full-time, you've got plenty of time to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that, like you said, they get to 32, 33 and then having to start from scratch. And then that's when they start to go on their coaching courses. That's when they start to do their badges. And a lot of people do that just because they want to be involved in football and they don't know anything else. Like,
scared the life out of me. That thought scared me big time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I remember you saying at one point you wanted to go and do a bit of work experience, didn't you? Like with some of the people within either LBC, like you had a good relationship with Justin, you were talking about maybe potentially going and doing, sitting in with him a few days a week and just trying to get an idea. I remember you having those conversations. So I knew that those cogs were sort of turning in your head, but I just, you obviously then it came to not an abrupt end, but obviously you made the decision to move on. I think it's a really valuable one. Like I remember talking to some of the players. Obviously, Kaya's, like you said, we're a decent club, but we're not paying, life-changing sums of money. So these people, unless they're seeing it as a stepping stone to going to move on and further their careers, if you're 28, 29, you're still playing at Kaya, then you better be looking at what's the next move for me, like what's the next stage for me. And I think that's the same for anyone who's playing in the PFL, because you're not earning life-changing money. So you've got to be setting up other things for your life post-career. I think that's a massive one. And if you don't, then you're going to be faced with a lot of the problems that footballers find themselves in now, which are, mental health issues with alcohol, issues with gambling, and just, marital issues. All of these things come to play, financial issues, because they're used to and accustomed to a certain lifestyle, a level of lifestyle that's just not, you cannot sustain that unless you're earning 30, 40, 50 grand a week.
No one can do that unless you played in the Premier League in England, or you at one of these clubs that are paying ridiculous amounts of money. It ain't happening. This money ain't going to last forever. Now, I know there are players in the PFL that are on good money, like Schrock and at Ceres. I'm sure there's a few boys that are taking home decent money each month, but it's not like it. I don't imagine it'll be life-changing money. It's probably money that could probably set them up for a few years after playing. But it's something that I would really want to drum into people's heads, especially these players that are 25, 26, 27. I think you've got to sort of be not realistic, but aware of what sort of level of player you are. I felt like I was very realistic with my ambitions. People were always saying, you can go to Thailand, you can do this, you can do that, you can go and get bigger money. But after that MLS experience, I quickly knew what sort of player I was, and I always compare it to back here in the UK. The level here in the UK, no matter what anyone says, is incredible. like the non-league setup, grassroots non-league pyramid, there are some like exceptional players. And I would always compare myself to players, my mates that were playing back here. And 9 times out of 10, they're a better player than me. So I quickly realised that if they're playing that level in England, it's going to be really hard for me to sort of carve a career out for myself here. And, you know, there were options to go abroad and stuff. But again, it wasn't the sort of deal that would change my life. So in the back of my mind, it was always, there's more to life than football, than playing football. That's the way I always saw it. There was other things that I wanted to do. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that took my eye off my will to win and want to compete. That's what I love more than anything. But I always knew that it wasn't going to last forever, and that if I wanted to do this and that and have a family and have a house and things like that, that it was better for me to sort of get out sooner rather than later. Do you know what I mean?
That's incredible. I mean, that's actually something that I'm terrified about, being in and around Kaya, being in and around Philippine football, is the number of players who don't give that a thought. You know, individuals.
It's scary, mate.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I've cracked it at all. I've far from cracked it. I'm far from set up for life at all. Nowhere near it. But the thought of me finishing my football now and having to start from square one scared the life out of me.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these kids, you know, they get picked out of their provinces at an early age, maybe just after grade school. They go to Manila, and they're basically professional athletes since that age, right? They've been asked to come in the schools, live there. They're given an allowance. They play. That's it, basically. Whether they do well in school or not is not the priority. And a lot of them will not be able to use their degrees properly in the workforce, you know? So it's a terrifying sort of predicament for a lot of the players who don't give that thought as to what they want to do. But you're still in the football industry. You're still quite busy. You're very busy on my Twitter feed.
Yeah, we're busy. So I remember actually, it was, this is a nice little plug for me here. So I'm going to give you the spiel, the sales spiel. But I remember being absolutely obsessed with watching our games back and watching myself play. And, you know, all our games at Rizal were filmed. And I remember sitting in my room, like making notes in Stamford in BGC, making notes of how I can sort of provide the same service back in the UK. Just purely on that self-obsessed, I love watching myself back playing football, and how can I deliver that to my friends that are playing in the non-league game, grassroots game in the UK. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I'd never picked up a video camera, never done any editing. Just knew that there was sort of a gap there that I could have a bet on. And yeah, you're right, Jing. We aren't where I want us to be. You know, we're on the right path, but it was something new. No one's ever done this in the UK, where they're sort of given the exposure and production, you know, broadcast production level to non-league and grassroots football. In the UK, you have the Premier League and you have League Two, 80 odd clubs, it may be 100 odd clubs, and they're covered by BT and Sky, you know, traditional broadcasters, huge corporations. And then the data is quite hard to find, but they say there's around 15,000 non-professional games played in the UK every week when there's no rain or postponements.
What?
And
15,000?
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm talking across
all levels,
under 7 kids to vets, to walking football, to disability football, to women's football, all levels. Okay, across the UK, they say there's around 15,000 games per week, and we want to. All of them games are up for grabs. You know, they're all up for grabs to be filmed, to be packaged up into highlights packages, and that's our aim. You know, we want to have a footprint on them 15,000 games each week. And I had that idea back in Stamford. I was telling my mates about it, telling my dad about it, I would always get the sort of comment back, well, why do they want their games filmed? They don't care about it. But I had that experience of having our games filmed and feeling how good it felt to watching myself back when I had a good game, or if I didn't have a good game, looking back and looking at things that I didn't do so well. So that's where it all originated from, my experience in Manila of being filmed, to then thinking, how can I deliver that back to the UK? And you're right, we pre-COVID, we built up a lot of momentum. We were doing stuff with the FA, we were doing stuff with leagues, instead of working on a club by club basis, we were doing deals with leagues, and we still have a lot of them agreements in place. But yeah, like I also got to give a shout out to Midgie. I know you guys know Midgie.
Yeah, of course.
He was someone that I become close with in the Philippines when I was over there. He was the media guy, what you do now, Jim, the media marketing guy at Kaya, and was always there for me, no matter whether it was football or non-football related. And we kept in touch. And I knew, you guys know him, he's a genius, right? He's a genius on the marketing side. He's a genius on the business development side. He's very switched on. And he helped me in the primary stages of your instant replay. And it sort of developed where, he was doing more and more work. And now he's on a salary where we pay him each month for his work. So, yeah, I wanted to give Midgie a shout out, because without him, your instant replay wouldn't have even got off the ground. But like I was saying, we built up a load of momentum, and now COVID struck. So we are pretty much where we were at last season. Pre-COVID, the plan was to double our output to around 60 games a week for the 2021 season. We're not going to get there, but I think we'll remain where we were last year at 30, 35 games a week, which, to be honest with the pair of you, is a miracle. Absolute miracle that we've still got a business, to be honest. Last year, in the UK, it was the worst winter like ever recorded, I think, in terms of rainfall. From November to January, we had hardly any games on. There was Storm Brenda, Storm Sierra. Every other week there was this storm, and we were going weeks, months without games, which was hard. And all of them games from November to January were sort of rescheduled for the back end of the year, March, April, and then COVID comes. So we missed out on all of them games that were rescheduled as well. And if you think about it, that's almost half a season's worth of football. So even though we built up a lot of momentum last year with our reputation, we didn't have a great year on paper.
Right. I'm glad you finally mentioned the name of your company. The spiel
yeah,
didn't.
I forgot that bit. It's like you say, it's staying within the football industry, which is definitely really important to me. I know how to talk, and I enjoy dealing with football people like yourselves. We can talk on a level, we have something in common. Even like you said, Chris, I was peppering Justin and Paul and Santi about getting some work with them, but I don't think I would have done very well, because I think like most things in life, they say do what you know, don't they? And I think all I really know is football, and I'm very happy to still be in this industry. Not playing, but being a cameraman's second best, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's quite incredible. What a journey, right? I mean, you say you're not good in class, you weren't good in academics, but intelligent guy. I mean, you started your own business, and you're making it work, and staying in the community of football, and providing a tremendous service. I'm starting to see that there's some incredible quality as well at lower leagues. There's some tremendous goals that I've seen that you guys have been able to capture, and I'm sure if you were playing on a weekend and you scored a worldie, none of your friends would believe you. But
exactly,
let me show you the video, bro. Let me show you how good that top corner was, or whatever it was. There's fantastic value.
That is it, mate. That is it down to a T. So my goal is to sort of, a lot of the clubs we work with are like, they go into the pub after the game and have a few beers. Do you know what I mean? And my whole thing was, once it gets to 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, can we give these fellas the clip on social media of their goal? So once they're all on the dance floor, their mates are on the other side of the bar, the notification comes through and they can all crowd round and have a look at the worldie that he was talking about 20 minutes later that no one believed him about. And I get a little bit of a buzz out of that, being able to do that. But like you say, like, it's great. I love it. I just to go backwards a little bit, I think when I was playing, I wasn't the most talented, I wasn't the most athletic, but I think something that I really did try to have was that willingness to win. And I don't know if it came across this way, you may know, but I'm very, very competitive, like in anything I do, like very competitive, like whether it's like run to that post over there, I want to get there first. That was just the way I was. I don't know if you sort of sensed that, Chris, at training and that, but with the world I'm in now, with the working world, it's competition 24/7, 365 days a year, no time off, which I love. I absolutely love it. Whereas football, it was like, okay, train for 2 hours a day. Okay, I can be super competitive there. Play for 90 minutes on a Saturday or a weekday evening, can be competitive there. But apart from that, it's quite hard to be competitive. Where now it's we've got more and more people wanting to film their games, and they're doing their little startups like myself, people that I've sort of given advice to who have now bought a camera and they're trying it out. So it's the competition part of it that I really like. It's not necessarily how much money do we have in the bank or how much money are we making or anything like that. It's, if anyone wants their games, I want them to come to us. And it's that competition that I really thrive on now.
It's quite interesting he says that, Jing. I don't know if you picked up on this, but like when he was talking earlier about him wanting to, he was fixated on this whole MLS as an end goal. Now he's talking about it in terms of more the process element to what he does on a day-to-day, which I find quite intriguing. And I think, I go through I talk about football a lot, obviously, and especially in the coaching realm, that is definitely having things that are processed rather than outcome driven is definitely the mantra that's coming out of a lot of these coaching courses and podcasts that I listen to. I'm sure it's similar with the business ones, Louis, that I know you listen to a lot of these ones. You send me some random ones every now and again, and I think that is the way forward. I think too many people are fixated on, I want the house, or I want the car, or I want, this amount of followers, or whatever it might be, whatever this is in your mind that you're fixated on, that you think will generate this kind of happiness, or that will give you a sense of achievement. But really, once you achieve that, then where do you go from that point? There's only one person that can. There's only one person who can win the gold medal at the Olympics. Do you know what I mean? Does that mean that everyone else is a failure? No, not really. Not really. Yeah. If you've enjoyed that process, if you've given yourself, if you've worked as hard as you possibly can, and you come on with a silver, it's disappointing. But if you've enjoyed that process, that cycle you've gone through, inspired people along the way, and I think that's also really, really important. So it's quite funny that you seem to, I don't know whether it's organic or it's something that you've specifically tried to steer clear of because of your previous experiences, but for whatever reason, that thing that caused you your downfall perhaps in your earlier life is probably the thing that's given you the most drive and ambition and success, relatively speaking, in your current role.
That's what they say, don't they? It's what's the definition of being dumb is doing the same thing twice and expecting a different outcome. So when that experience happened in America, honestly, lads, I used to envision myself playing for a certain team and wearing the kit. I don't care if that sounds over the top, but it's what worked for me. I used to envision everything, and I used to focus so much on that I would forget about what I was doing on that day. And that sort of process, it didn't work for me the first time. So I really tried to change that, and focus on, now I try and focus on what I've got to do today. Have that end goal. We have an end goal of doing 100 games a week. That's the aim. That's where we want to get to. But I know that if I focus on that too much, we're never going to get there. Just like how I was focusing on the MLS and not worrying about doing an extra session on the track, or going to the physio room to try and get treatment, doing them little things day by day. didn't get me to where I wanted to go. Now I've definitely learned my lesson. You know, have that end goal. I know what it is, but don't obsess about it. You know, if you, look, lads, this is just my advice. I haven't cracked it. I'm no big businessman at all, but I know what I need to do now. I know that if I take it step by step and day by day and get what needs to be done that day, I think, you know, in the long run, I'll get your instant replay where it needs to be. But yeah, you're right, Chris. It's definitely more process driven than focusing on that end goal.
I just want to, I mean, you mentioned there about going into the treatment room and kind of, you know, maybe working on some of the injuries and stuff, just bringing it back to football a little bit. You know, I think one of the things that created your downfall was the fact that you, again, maybe it's your competitive side that caused this. You suffered immensely with injuries. You know, like I'm looking back and like you said, you hit the ground running. That first year especially, like you were lights out. You had a phenomenal that cup run, and then going into that first season under Adam Reiki. You know, I think you're arguably the best player in the league at that point. And then
you said I was the best player in the league the other day. You said I was. Definitely.
No, I said arguably, and then they must have edited that bit out. There was a bit of technical issues.
Bit of a glitch there.
Yeah, there's a glitch, mate. So yeah, I think I said you were like after me, arguably one of the best players in the league. But your first year, you were electric, and then, you know, if you talk about your physical being not necessarily your biggest attribute, but I think your directness and your sort of relentlessness was probably your key attribute, I would say, especially in those first 12 months. But was it your injuries, or was it other factors, do you think, contributed to perhaps you not hitting those heights as you went through the years that you spent in the Philippines?
You're right. There was a few things, but like you said, like listening to the 4 and 11 podcast the other day, I don't know, Chris, I'm still, my body is knackered, mate. I walk with like a slight limp. Honestly, I walk with a slight limp. I can't run. And this guy, I want to talk about this definitely, because it is a huge part of why I wasn't great on the pitch at all towards the back end. Well, even when I got on the pitch, and it's totally my fault. So Gene, I know you weren't at Cairo at the time, so I'll explain it to you. I had an injury on my ankle where we didn't know what it was for a long time. But looking back at it, I'd gone from being in Australia, not doing much, training once a week, to then being put in an environment where, you know, it was intense. Training was intense. It was hard. It was in the heat. It was on surfaces that weren't always great. I found it tough, you know, and that competitive spirit, nature, whatever you want to call it, was ultimately my downfall. I would run myself into the ground. Like, I don't think there were the off day, Chris, but I would say that I worked hard in training 90% of the time. Like, really, I always
50,
gave my all.
50% of the time.
I always felt like, especially at the start, I wanted to impress. You know, I really wanted to impress and be the best player out there. And I started getting a few niggles, but my ankle was something that I knew was serious. And credit to Paul and Justin, they gave me every opportunity to get an operation. I needed an operation. I basically had a cartilage issue in my ankle, and the doctor said, "Look, your ankle, the cartilage in your ankle is meant to be like." I remember him saying it, Dr. Castro. He was like, your ankle's going to be like a white ball, snook on a pool table, like a smooth white surface. But he said mine looked like someone just got a hammer and smashed it, and it was like an egg, cracked egg. Like my cartilage was completely just messed up. And you think about it, it was my left ankle, it was my standing foot. I strike the ball with my right, so a lot of weight's always going onto my left foot. It was seriously painful, and it was to the point where I weren't training. I was dosing up on painkillers. I was nowhere near where I wanted to be, but there was no quick solution to it. It was either have an op or have these sort of steroid injections, these cortisone injections. I was given both options. Santi, Paul, Justin, LBC were like, look, here's the money for the operation. You can have the operation, but you're going to be out for 8 to 12 months. Ridiculous, like not playing football at that time in my year when we had the AFC there, you know, things that I had aspired to play in for my whole
When did
life.
you first? When did you first realise it was a problem, Louis?
It was when so I kept moaning about it, saying I'm struggling, and Kaya were great, you know. There was always one day in the week where they would chuck us in the van and take us off to the hospital, and whoever needed to get treatment would go and see Dr. Castro, or if you were sick, you would see a doctor. So I remember like relying on the PTs at training, and they didn't really know because obviously they don't have X-ray machines there. They would say, do you know what I mean? They would do the best with what they had. And then I got recommended to go to the hospital. And then, Chris, I was going every week. I was going every single week to the hospital. And they didn't really... I had scans. Kyle were paying for me to have scans, all sorts of scans, all sorts of treatments. And they came up with this conclusion that my ankle was messed up and I needed an op. And it was either, here's an op, sit out, you know, in Manila for 12 months, not playing football. It was never going to happen. Never, ever. I wasn't just going to... Or it was play and have these cortisone injections. Now, these cortisone injections, like, how they're legal, I'll never, ever know. It was like, I would have one, you would lay in bed for a day, like, you'd have to be off your feet, wake up, and your ankle is brand new. Like, I think this is quite common practice within, like, top professional sports, especially in the US. I think, like, a lot of American footballers have them and stuff like that. So, you know, I want to get it the point across that Kaya gave me the opportunity to be paid whilst having this operation and sitting out, but it was my choice to sort of say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to play in the AFC Cup. I want to help the team. I want to play. That's why I'm there. So I had this injection, and it lasts like 6 months, and it was brilliant. So I got back out on the field, started training again, picked up a few other injuries, but my ankle, which was my main issue, was fine. And I needed another one. I needed another injection. And then over the space of like a year, I had 12 injections on my left ankle. 12. So it was what the first one lasted like 6 months. These numbers might be a bit off. I can't exactly remember. But it ended up being that I needed an injection every 3 or 4 weeks. Because the more you have them, the more your body sort of gets used to it, and the more damage I was doing to my ankle, because it was simply just masking the pain. It wasn't fixing me. So I kept training, taking more of these shots, and it would come to the point where like I needed the operation so badly. I didn't have the time for the op. You know, I really didn't. I wanted to play in the AFC Cup, and ultimately that's what stopped me from signing that Tampines, and along with some other factors, I was crooked them last 2 years, like physically, injury after injury after injury, but underlying, like overruling that was my ankle was completely messed up. And that's not me trying to make excuses. The people that know how bad it is. And even now, like in lockdown, a few of my mates started a campaign to do like 5K runs to keep people active during lockdown and stuff like that, to raise some money, and they raised like fortunes. But I was doing my 5K run and I wouldn't be able to walk after and stuff like that. I'm still in real bad shape from it. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm not saying that was the complete reason why I wasn't as good as performing as well as I would have liked to have been, but it was definitely a big part of it. I don't care what anyone says. People that know, Paul, Justin, Doctor, Chris, they know that I was struggling big time, because anyone that says that I wouldn't give it my 100%, especially on game day, it doesn't really know me. I wanted to win at everything.
I think one of the problems that I encountered, because obviously this is like just give you a sort of timeline. I can remember when I first started seeing some of your issues, probably the back end of that 2015 season, the season we won the cup. Because if you recall,
all a muddle to me. Yeah.
The season we won the cup. So the start of the year, Adam Reeky's in charge. You're on fire, right?
Yeah,
so you're on fire.
Yeah.
So this is when I'm saying, after me, best player in the league, right? So this is when he's tip top Louis Clark. then during this period, like, so by the end of the season, when we win the cup and I'm in charge as a player coach, you actually just coming off the bench.
Mm.
Yeah. You remember that? So for the cup, for the cup, you're only coming off the bench, and essentially you're just there to score penalties or come on with 10 minutes to go to maybe try to see out a game.
Which burnt me in my chest. I hated it. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to be out there scoring every goal. Like, that's just like, and you brought some good players in. You brought some really good players in, and it wasn't an automatic that I was going to start. Mendy, Jordan, two players that I would say are better ability than me, like two fantastic players. So it was really hard to get in the squad, along with, look, we all have injuries. If you show me a player that hasn't had injuries, I'll show you a liar. Everyone that plays sports has injuries and plays through injuries. But with this one, it was tough, you know, standing foot, ankle. I then developed like a quad strain. I don't remember if you remember, Chris, but a quad strain that I couldn't shake off. So you think about it, my standing left leg, my right quad, which I'm striking the ball, I was out of action. I couldn't physically get round it. Now, I don't want to say that was the only reason. There were other factors as well. When I first got to Kaya, I was slung out in the sticks in the Kaya house in, where is it? I forget.
Merville.
Oh, good old Merville, right? With Freddie, Rich Greer, real good people around me. You know, after a game, we would have a red horse and watch something on TV and then go to bed. Well, I quickly realised about BGC and what was going on in BGC and just everything about it. And my mate Sham lived in BGC, who played for Morocco. I knew Sham from back in England. And I quickly found out that, like, the clubs were open all night, that there was stuff going on, and the nightlife was fantastic. And I had a great time. But that also crept into my life where, you know, I was 24, 25, whatever it was, and I wanted to go out as well, you know, and that definitely played a part. I remember going out before training, drinking before training, being out all night, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And that also was part of why, you know, I don't think it affected my performance, but it definitely didn't help me get healthy and fit, you know? It didn't help my ankle, going out drinking all night, doing this, staying up late, when really I should be resting and trying to get my body right to go out and train. I think that definitely played a big part in it as well, you know?
Yeah, from like the outside looking in, Jing, like one thing I think, like I would agree with a lot of what Louis is saying there. You know, like the injuries did cause a lot of problems for him, and there were times, especially me, like you said, no one gets injured. I never got injured, so I was always one who was trained. Yeah, I was always like, I never get injured. So, and I was always a good trainer, so I used to get frustrated with him when I was a player, and then as a coach, I was always. And this is something that I've explained in the podcast, where I think mismanagement, as me being an inexperienced coach, came to the fore, because I was like that with Louis and some of the other players. You know, people like Alfred, who always had injuries, and, you know, because the way he played, you probably should have given him a bit more rest. And, you know, and I think what invariably happened with Louis is a concoction of a lot of different things. So you got the issue with their injuries, which is obviously causing him problems. He then turns to probably, you know, trying to overly socialise, especially in that last year. And then finally, when he does get on the pitch, a lot of the times he was like this bubble, like just simmering on the surface, and invariably he found himself getting into trouble with yellow cards, red cards, suspensions, unnecessary activities on the pitch, and I think that also factored in, because of the fact was you were injured, so you're frustrated. Yeah, by the time you get on the pitch, you're just like, just like this wound up coil, and then you let loose, and then you invariably 3-match suspension because you've 2-footed someone, you know, or got into a fight off the ball. And I think that was one of the things that sort of led to that being quite a frustrating year for you. It was a combination of all of those things. That's from an outsider looking in. And that's why, like I sort of said, I wish I'd managed that situation different, because taking a back seat now, I think I could have managed that situation better as a coach, because obviously that by this time I'm now the head coach and I'm now responsible. But, you know, I also feel a little bit of an obligation as a coach, because I remember you getting those shots and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, I don't know if you've seen Varsity Blues, but there is that element of it, like, is this the right thing? Like, is this,
No,
Is this
yeah.
something that we're condoning? But then by the same token, like you said, you're competitive and you're like, I just want to get out on the pitch. I think even if I had have stepped in and gone, Louis, listen, just take the operation, take the 12 months off, you probably would have gone, no way, Chris, I ain't doing it.
It wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I wanted. Like yourself, Paul and Justin gave me that option. It was there on the table. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't what I wanted to do. I was obsessed again with playing in the AFC Cup. I wanted to play, and that it was my decision, 100%. But you're right, Chris. It was a mixture of things that made me not perform how I wanted to perform on the pitch. It was going out too much, which was due to being injured. It weren't the right thing to do. It really weren't. Don't get me wrong, I would have still gone out, but I wouldn't have gone out to the excess that I was going out before training. And that. You shouldn't be doing it. One thing I would say is that I never went out like boozing before a game. That's something that I never did, and I actually got collared for it. I don't know if you remember when Fabian was there. I mean, this guy, Jing, he's a clown. The bloke should never, ever, ever have been a football coach. I don't know where they've dug him up from, but he came in and they talk about first impressions. I looked at the bloke and we just didn't hit it off at all. And I think the iceberg of that was there was Chris Brown concert in Manila, and we had training right before, and we had a game the next day. And me, OJ, Kenny, we all went, but we had a game the next day. I think some other boys came as well. I can't remember. And it was is it Mall of Asia? Like that big, like a big arena, ain't there? So like Chris Brown's in Manila. Obviously, I'm going to go to Chris Brown in Manila. It wasn't even a late thing at all, but we had a game the next day. And I remember being at training and Fabian's going, I'm going to the concert, but none of you lot are allowed to go. So I was like, all right, well, that's not happening. Tickets are booked. We're going. Like, I remember saying, we're going. We're not drinking. We're going. And then we get to the concert. We're at the concert. We're having a dance. You know, it's Chris Brown. He's in Manila. Like, it's like one of them things that I'm not going to miss. And then I've seen Fabian out the corner of my eye, and he was with some Filipino chick. I don't know. And then didn't think anything else of it. Literally didn't think anything else of it. If he caught me with like a Budweiser in my hand or something like that, I'd be like I'm in trouble here. But it weren't the case. No matter what anyone says to me, I'll throw my hands up when I'm in the wrong. But this one, it's not happened. So we turn up to the game the next day, and I'm expecting to play. Didn't hear anything else of it. Got my boots ready, got my shin pads. Look up at the board. Name's not in the starting 11. You know, day before, I'm in the starting 11 at training, set pieces and all of that. And then, not in the starting 11. So me or OJ. So we just thought, fuck this, we're off, we're gone. Like, I'm going home. I'm not sitting out here and sitting on the bench. And then didn't say bye, just watched the game, then shot off. Obviously got pulled into a meeting the next day. And Chris, were you in the meeting? It was in a hotel, like an apartment block in BGC, where I think that Fabian lived. And we had a meeting. I remember Paul and him being in there. I can't remember if you were in there. You were a player then, so I don't know if you...
Maybe not.
Yeah, but then Fabian's turned around and gone, yeah, we're fining you a month's money. So I said, all right, well, I'll see you later. I'm going home. I'm going back to England. And then Paul was just like, oh, whoa. Like, hold on. Like, OJ the same. So they threatened to fine OJ a month's money as well. And we were both like, we're off. We're going. He's going back to America. I'm going back to England. And then credit to Paul, he sort of, you know, this was Fabian saying these things. Do you know what I mean? Like, you talk about how to manage your players. He had no reason. Like, if I can't go out and not drink, you know, I'll hold my hands up when I have a drink or do whatever. If I can't go out and go to a concert, I don't like. For me, that's just like, what are we doing? Do you know what I mean? It's not the army. That's too regimented. But I think it's really important you have a life outside of football whilst you're playing, right? And doing things like that, I don't see. If I was a manager, I wouldn't see any problem with, as long as you turn up on the day and you're ready to go. So he tried fining us a month's money. Paul sort of rescued the day because I was ready to go. OJ was ready to go, and we figured it out. But Yeah, Fabian.
I remember.
Sorry,
I remember. Lou, let's just get this right, okay? He's no saint because there was another
who,
time.
me or Fabian?
You, definitely not you.
Right.
So there was a time when I think I was in charge, and I think you, Tishan Hanley, George Boutron, and Ben Bowrer. Right?
Before training, right? Before training.
Okay, yeah, before training, showed up to one of my sessions, and I think I got word. And Louis knows this. I've got people everywhere,
Yeah.
and then so I got them all together in a group. This is like an 8 a.m. session. I said, right, I'll give you all a chance. I said, right, I know a bunch of you were out in the pool club last night. So I said, you can. So I said, right. So I said, if you're in the pool club last night,
we were swimming. We were going for a swim, mate.
Go. I said, go stand over here if you're in the pool club. I knew who Louis was, but didn't know the other ones were. So I think a few of them, a few random ones stepped out, and we ended up doing a bit of running, didn't we? That morning, I joined in. I did it with you.
It was probably the hottest day ever. I think people were being sick and everything, weren't they?
Tish was sick. And he wasn't sick from the alcohol because he didn't drink, but apparently he ate some dodgy food from the buffet. This is what he claims.
You're right, though. I think training's one thing and it shouldn't be done. Do you know what I mean? But turning up, drinking before a night of a game is something that I wouldn't do and I didn't do. And the fact that I didn't like this bloke before he made that decision, that assumption, you know, and then he came with it. At Kaijing, you know, everyone says hello to each other, shakes hands and then says goodbye to each other. It's part of like the culture. It's really good. I loved it. Well, this fella, I would go out of my way not to say hello to him and go out of my way not to say goodbye to him just because I couldn't get along with him. The thing with managers is that if I feel like you ain't been there, this is when I was playing, it's different now. If I feel like you haven't been there or done it, or I don't trust your opinion and you're telling me what to do, I think I can be quite rude and just bit of a shit personality, really. Like if I don't think it's coming from a good source, I just aren't going to have it. And from the get-go, I made it quite clear that I weren't interested in what he had to say. And I think that was a reflection on the results as well, to be honest. I think when Adam Reiki was there, Adam Reiki was brilliant, wasn't he? We were top of the league when he left. Don't think we lost the game. And I valued him as a person and as a coach. And obviously when Chris was there, the same. But with that middle spell where, Chris, I'll get muddled up with it. Was that when I was really falling out of form, or was I still...
No, you're still good. I mean, the Morocco game was within that window, wasn't it? The 3-2 game, you scored... He scored a couple. Adam was helping you out, giving you assists and stuff.
Yeah, you had Anton at right back and Adam at centre half. So I sort of looked at that and said, right, I'm going to go and play over there because... I knew they couldn't live with it. Like Anton is one of the worst football players I've ever seen in my life, without a doubt. And I know you boys are mates with him, but let me put it into terms, into a context. He wouldn't get in the pub side back here. He wouldn't get in the pub side. And I know you can't say anything, but he wouldn't. So whenever I played against him, like I'm not saying I'm a smart player, but I would realise who's no good. And I would say, right, I'm going to go and play off his shoulder or off his shoulder. And Adam Mitter, I don't really want to say a bad word about him. He's a nice lad. He's a really nice lad, Adam. So I don't really want to talk about him like that. And I actually wish him all the best with his football. He's obviously doing well. But, when I was playing, I used to try and figure out who I wanted to play against and attach myself to them.
You've warmed up a little bit, haven't you? It's taken you about an hour, but now all of a sudden you're putting people on blast. Listen, this guy, right?
Just said I had a coffee.
Yeah, it's all kicked in. Let's be clear, right? He also walked out of one of our friendly games that I was in charge of. He was shocked in the warm-up and he just went home. I had a pop at him and he walked off. So he does pretty much blanket disrespect everyone. Right, so
Anton, he knows it's coming. I ain't bothered about that. If he ever came to England, I'd like to just be at the gate and shove him back on the plane and fly him back out to Manila. Like I didn't like that guy one bit, and it wasn't just on on the field stuff, it was off the field stuff as well. Like I would see him out, and there was things that happened and all this. But Adam, I don't want to put him in the same breath as him. Like I actually do have respect for the boy, and wish him all the best. To be honest.
Anyone else? Yeah. Anyone else you want to have a go at?
No, they really
no.
ain't.
It's just.
Like,
I hope not. I wasn't going to give you much airtime if you did.
Nah, there's no one really. Like I wouldn't mind talking about the players that I did rate. To be honest, and there's plenty of them. Do you know what I mean? I think.
So what? Yeah. So go on then. Like obviously, we talked about the 11 that we had the foreign boys, and obviously a lot of those guys you were quite pally with, weren't you? Like obviously Ormond and that lived in your building. Freddie and Rich, we spoke about from our team. Who were the kind of players that you played against who were out here? Who you were like, they could definitely play at a top level. Any.
Yeah. Well, the same old names really, but like on other teams, I'll go with other teams first. I think Sarah's had some good players. I always liked Maniot. I didn't know him. Never. I only said hello to him a few times, but I always thought he was a good player. I always thought Phil. I thought Phil oozed class. How motivated he was, I don't know, but I think he was like very good player. I liked watching him play. On other teams, I liked. There were some good fullbacks in that league. There were some good fullbacks. I remember having good battles with Sato. Don't know where he's playing now. I liked him as a player. And staying on the fullback theme, the boy Serge, the international boy. Yeah, I liked him. Like just athleticism on another level. But the ones that really stick in my mind are the boys that were at Kaya. And when, not just saying it, but when Chris was in charge, we had some team. Like, we had some players. Like, the ones that really stick out were, like, Mendy. Like, even though we were similar position and stuff, I wouldn't say he was the most, had all the ability in the world, but in terms of athleticism, he had the athleticism of a pro player back here in England. Like, for me, out of everyone that I can think of, he would probably go through the rankings further than anyone, because I think when you get to a certain level, ability sort of doesn't stop, but athleticism can get you there, and he had that in abundance. I don't think there's many people that can play against him. He was so strong and quick, it was frightening. But the player that really sticks in my mind that I don't think could have gone further up the leagues than Mendy was Miguel Tanton. Might seem quite a shocking one, but Miguel, with a ball at his feet, like, is frightening. His feet are out of this world. And I remember thinking, in the right team, given the right role, he could be like, he was so fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching Miggs play. It was one of them ones where, like, he couldn't really pass that well. He wasn't very quick. He wasn't very strong, but he was so good on the ball, and like, not strong, but used his body well, and reminded me a lot of players that I used to look up to, like Joe Cole and players like that had a bit of didn't play the game like everyone else, had a sort of swagger to their game, bit scrappy, but like could easily have three players around him and a touchline there, and managed to worm his way out and get out of that situation. And I loved watching Miguel play. I'm sure there's others as well that I've missed out on. There were some good players in that league. OJ, I know I'm talking about the Kaya guys, but I liked watching OJ play. I think he's probably come along as a player as he's got older. When I was playing with him, he was young, but I see him scoring goals in the AFC Cup and stuff, and he was always fun to play with. Alfred Osei, like you said in your previous podcast, he was different class. I wasn't there for when you guys said he was out of this world at Emperador, but he was the sort of player where, like, I talk about playing through injuries. This boy had injuries that you wouldn't believe. Like, he shouldn't have been playing, and he would still soldier on and put his body on the line, and I respected that. I didn't really think he was the best on the ball. I always had him as a centre half. When he further throughout the years, he sort of moved into that defensive centre mid role. But in terms of an out and out defender, you ain't getting round me. I think there ain't many better than him. But then, you know, I remember playing against, I forget his name now, the Korean boy at Ceres. He's about 10 foot tall.
Kawasi,
What's
I
his
think his
name?
name was. It?
No, the other
massive,
one.
massive,
The other
massive
one.
geezer.
Yeah.
Forgot his name.
I had nightmares against him. I remember the Spanish centre half at Ceres, older guy.
Wani.
Yeah, he was like, he used to kick me up in the air. Yeah, lots of lots of really talented players, and obviously your Schrocks and Martin Stoible.
Yeah.
I remember them being good players. Obviously the Great Witch brothers, it goes without saying. But yeah, plenty. You know, even players like James. You know, great pedigree. It's quite funny with James. I actually wanted to talk about him because I don't know if you boys remember. I called him out on Twitter a few years ago. Completely out of the blue. Never really spoke to James when I was out there. Said hello and stuff. We'd be friendly. But there was a time when I stopped playing, I was quite bitter. I was still competitive and didn't have much to do. Was trying to get what I'm doing now off the ground. And them boys had all moved from Loyola to Davao.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if you remember. And I was gambling a lot at that time, like on football. And I'm not talking about having a fiver or a tenner. I was like chucking like all my money on things. And Davao had this influx of like big time players. Do you know what I mean? De Jong, the young husband brothers. They picked up a bunch of players. And in England, you can have a bet on the UFL, PFL, whatever it was. And the bookmakers had no idea about this influx of players going to this team and the money involved. And they were pricing up the games at like, I'm not even joking, like Davao at like 12-1. So if you have £1, you win 12 back. Like massive, massive value. And I was lumping on, lumping on, and they were getting beat by like Stallions 2-0. And I'm like waking up early to watch it, and I'm watching Phil and James, like they didn't care. They obviously didn't care that I had a bet on it. But I'm watching it thinking this is free money, and they're just getting beat every single week, and the bookmaker keeps pricing them up and up and up, and I'm thinking I'm reloading because they have got to win a game soon, and they couldn't win a game. So I lost my head, went on Twitter and said, James, what the are you playing at? Put the ball in the net. You've had a stinker there. And it was completely out of order. Like I actually regret that. So if he's listening to this, he probably ain't. But I'd like to say I've listened to his interviews with you boys, and he's actually like a really nice fella. Like comes across really well, harmless bloke, nice guy. So I'd want to publicly say sorry for that, because as soon as I did that, he sort of messaged me straight away saying, "Sorry, mate. Like I thought we were like didn't think it was like that." And I sort of said, "Do one." Do you know what I mean? Do one. I ain't interested. And then we haven't spoke since, apart from, I think, through Midgie, where Midgie told me that. I said to Midgie, like, tell him, I'm sorry and all that. But I think it's only right I sort of say my piece on that and apologise.
Does anyone else want to say apologise to? Anyone else? Anyone, you know, you've said horrible things to over the years, abused on social media.
No.
That's just it. That's it. You got a list.
That's what I love about Louis, though, man. Like,
yeah, but I'll say it how it is. Like, the James thing I had in my head before that I wanted to bring up. Do you know what I mean? And just get it out there.
That's one thing I always enjoyed about you. You know, like you always spoke your mind, but both ways, right? You admit it when you're wrong, so it evens it out. You know what I mean? But it's always entertaining. That's for the outsiders. It's always entertaining.
And like I sort of said, like from when I was playing, like I didn't know if I noticed it at the time, but I would always try and pick battles with people to try and get the best out of myself.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Whether it's like before the game or during the game, that adrenaline, whatever you want to call it, definitely sort of, I think, made me more motivated to go out there and win the game. And the end goal was obviously just to win games. So however I found a way to try and do it, it might have upset people. It may have given me a bad reputation. But at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was win games for Kaya. So I did whatever I felt it took at the time.
So all in all, was it about 3 years? 3 years in the Philippines, was it?
Something like that, weren't it? 2 or 3 years, yeah. 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. Quite an eventful run. Obviously started hot. As you said, there was the injuries in between and closer to the end, but you still got to the AFC Cup. You still scored a goal. You scored the winning penalty in 2015 in the UFL Cup. What's the highlight for you out of everything?
The penalty is what sticks in my mind the most, funny enough. I don't know if you're the same, Chris, when you play, but I actually if I close my eyes and think about that, I can actually put myself there. It's so weird to say, but I remember again, always wanting to just be the winner, always wanting to take the 5th penalty, because I knew that if it worked out that way, that the pressure would be on me, and I loved that. And I remember them missing in the final. I believe it was this, and Ali Borromeo. And obviously, Ali was at the end of his career when he was playing with us, and I don't think he was the player that a lot of people told me about previously. When Ali was fit, people used to say to me he was the best player out there by a mile. Was a complete beast, and he's obviously had really poor luck with his knees and injury, and I think he was at the back end of his career. But one thing that did stick with me with Ali was that he's been there and done it in front of them big crowds, and obviously I respected that, and I listened to a lot of what he said actually. But he sort of said, just embrace it, this don't happen often, and he was bang on. It was true. It doesn't happen often. It's never happened since. But yeah, walking up to that penalty, putting the ball down, and I remember so clearly looking over my shoulder and seeing just everyone looking at me this is big. This was all that mattered to me in my life at that point. Getting to the AFC Cup, as dramatic as that sounds, it's the truth. And that really sticks in my mind. Just walking up to it and striking the penalty, and I remember that. I also remember not necessarily the games in the AFC Cup. I weren't playing, but the experience of the AFC Cup, travelling, hotels, doing things properly, meals, eating right, living like a pro was no matter what anyone says to you that aspires to be a pro footballer, it's not just the on the field things that matter to them. It's about feeling like a pro, them little things, and we had that in abundance in the AFC Cup. Kaya looked after us. We weren't going for nothing. There was everything we needed. It was there, and that really sticks in my mind. I remember that first global game. I think it was my first league game against Global or something. I remember first big game was against Global, and they had a bit of an aura about them. I had no idea. I'd never seen them play, but they had some big signings. I think they were spending as much money as anyone else in the league. I might be wrong on that. It's just what I remember. And we weren't expected to win, and we ended up winning the game. And with Riki, I think it was Riki in charge. I remember that game quite clearly. Other than that, it is a bit of a blur. I think the games just come so far and in between that you sort of lose momentum a lot of the times, whether it's an international tournament or there's a walkout or whatever it is. It's sort of hard to remember a lot of it because there was so much time in between. You know what I mean?
It's nice that moment that you striking that penalty in 2015, it's immortalized. It's in my computer. I have that picture. I posted the image of you celebrating. That's
nice
etched in history forever.
Yeah, that goes down as a special moment for me. But had nothing to do with me, Jing. The boys were out there for 120 minutes, and I sort of came on for 10 minutes and scored a penalty. It had nothing to do with me. But I'd be lying to say it weren't a special moment. Do you know what I mean? It's something I'll never forget. It wasn't really like the the playing side of it. It was what it meant to Kaya. Like, I knew how much it meant to Paul and Justin. I knew how much it meant to them. I knew how much it meant to Chris. I knew, you know, some of my friends out there weren't many. Some of the people that I regarded as mates and that I could rely on, that small circle, it meant a lot to them. And yeah, that it was a good time for the club. It was great times.
Certainly so. Man, almost 2 hours we've been speaking already.
Sorry, yeah, I know.
Man, it's been so fast, you know. It's been awesome being able to catch up on everything and to know that the business is doing well, and hopefully after this whole pandemic situation gets sorted out, or we figure out how the new normal is going to be, that your instant replay will blow up after all of this. It's been fantastic chatting, man. Chris, anything else you'd like to ask or talk about?
No, not unless there's anyone else on his hit list who wants to sort of give a quick pan into. Done. No, he's done good. No, look, it's been good. I've wanted to get him on the show before because he's been a big fan since the beginning. He's always listened to the shows, obviously the ones that we've done with players that he knows he's really enjoyed, and obviously like the fact that he was on the featured in last week's podcast was what prompted us. He's obviously showed that he's a colourful character off it also, and his competitive side shines through. But yeah, I think it's a lot of people will be quite surprised at hearing some of the things that he's come up with there, and there's a lot of reasons to why perhaps he wasn't able to reach the heights of his first year. So I think it's important that he was able to speak about it in his own words, because I think not that side of his story wasn't really well documented. So for people to hear that, I think it's important, and it's good that he was able to explain it in his own words.
Definitely.
Hey, man, it's been nice being able to look back at all of that as well. I remember one of the experiences that stuck with me with you was one of the first times that actually we hung out was an Adidas event at the indoor pitch in Sparta. And I think it was only
I hated all that, mate.
I think it was only you and me that didn't get boots that day.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
So we were sitting down and we were just having a chat like, hey, man, nobody's remembered to bring our boots, right? So we were kind of in that boat. But what I recall was that Louis Clark was always a genuine guy, you know, always a genuine character.
I appreciate it.
Would always speak his mind. And it's been nice to be able to see you doing well, and you sending over nice words about the podcast, and me being able to look over it and see how you're doing over there in your instant replay, man. It's funny how the world of football keeps us all together, even though we're so far away, you know. And that was just a blip in time. That you being here and our interactions was a tiny piece of your time here, but yeah, it stuck out, man. Like I remember that time, and I remember the 3 years that you gave us here in the Philippines, and we appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it, mate. I appreciate everything you guys have done for me. The Filipino people are some of the best people in the world. I love my time there. Yeah, I have really fond memories. And with you guys with the podcast, I think it's great what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, one sec. Yeah, I think it's great what you're doing with the podcast. It's that consistency, isn't it? You boys have been consistent with your uploads. Over here in the UK, there's plenty of podcasts, but they will fizzle out within, I'll give most of them a month. You boys have gone through that test of time where you're still churning out content on a regular basis, and it's interesting, mate. I'm excited to see where it goes for the pair of you. You need to get a sponsor on board, I think. That's the next step, right?
Yeah. Well, we hope.
There's some big JP Morgan offices and Shangri-La offices in Manila. You should be going after them and getting some money out of them. But mate, it's great to see. It brings back loads of memories. So thank you both for getting this going. Do you know what I mean? It's great. We need to get more of the Kaya boys on here, I think. Because I'm sure some of the stories I've told, they might have a different opinion on it or whatever. But it'd be good to see some more players on here as well. Get Anton on. Why not get Anton on? Let him say his side of the story.
He's a good friend of the show, of course. So Anton will likely be back on the show at some point. And we'll have plenty to talk about with regards to Louis Clark. That's for sure.
Cousin. Loved it.
We appreciate the support, man. And yeah, it's been over 50 episodes now. So COVID couldn't stop us. So I don't think anything will.
Love it.
Right? So
No, onwards
tremendous
to the moon.
Tremendous having Louis on the show, and yeah, it really gave a fantastic insight on your time here and the highs and the lows and everything, the build-up of your trip over to the Philippines, your time in America and in Australia. We got a great glimpse into your life, man, and yeah, we appreciate the time that you gave us. If you guys enjoyed this conversation with Louis Clark here, we'd appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. That is it. We had Louis Clark on this Football Friday. Any last words, Chris?
Get him off. Get him off. He's got work to do. Look at him on his phone already, checking his messages.
I'm all right to get going now. We're all right.
Go find some more games to film. But no, it's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Hope everyone enjoys your insights. So, yeah, thanks for coming on, pal. Appreciate it.
Cheers, lads. Have a good day.